Well, guys, thank you so much for coming to our first XPT interview for the season of 2023. And for our second year of having interviews, we not just have one person to interview, but we have two. Whoa. For the price of one. Amazing. So I'm really excited about doing this interview with Aretta and Thom, two people who I have both worked with, and people that I would consider to be friends, definitely artistic friends, but I don't know a lot about you guys. So there's a lot to kind of dig up and find out. So probably the easiest thing for me to do is to start with Aretta, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
So I first came to know you by working on a project for Michael Haverty, which we were doing over at the goat farm. Mm-hmm. And as far as I know, that was the first time I had ever met you before. How long had you been working at the center at that point in time?
Just a couple of years. I came to the Center for Puppetry Arts 11 years ago, though I just hit the magic 30 years in puppetry, actually as of April 1. So it is my puppetiversary today, in fact, y'all. I will count it as April 1st is my beginning in puppetry, because that's when I auditioned for the company that would then hire me as a puppeteer for the first time. So though I didn't start working with them until May of 1993, it was April 1.
Wow.
Got into that. So yeah, and if I'm happy to tell you, Wade, that I'm an accidental puppeteer. Certainly that was my senior year in college. I was a theater major and was embarking on what I thought was a serious career in theater with an R-E, right? Artistic and dark and deep and wearing all black and wanting to do black box theater immersive work. And it didn't mean I hadn't heard of puppetry, but I wasn't one of those folks that had a vocabulary or a language for or with puppetry. I grew up in a country in such a little tiny town that unless the wind blew the certain way with the aerial, we didn't even get PBS. So I didn't even really watch Sesame Street. So though I'd heard of it, right, and certainly knew there were such things as puppets, it was for me the pop culture references only, so that when after I'm looking for summer stock work, after graduating with a theater degree from Ashland University in Ashland, Ohio, tiny little school, northeastern Ohio, went to those cattle call auditions. You have your 2 minutes, right? You do the 1 minute song, you do the 1 minute monologue, what's going to happen? And one of the companies that called me back was a puppet theater company based in Cincinnati, Ohio. It was, to be honest, slightly mortifying for me to think that this children's puppet theater company might be a place I would work, because I did not yet understand the depth and magic of puppetry. But I ended up saying yes to that gig because it happened to be in the city in which I was going to go to graduate school. So I accidental puppeteer out of convenience, really. I spent that summer with Madcap Productions Puppet Theater, touring libraries, touring community festivals, and I was horrible at it. But I love to tell everyone that, students and everyone, that I'm not doing this because it came fast, first, or easiest. I'm doing it because it challenged me in a way that nothing else had. And I have a particular personality that gets bored fairly easily, and need to look for challenges to keep myself. Yeah, Stephanie, I'm with you. The first step is in being good at something is sucking at it. Stephanie put that in the comments. I agree. I mean, and it didn't mean that I didn't have an affinity for it or love for it. It just meant I was fighting with the puppet. As a musical theater student, it was about me. It wasn't about the puppet. Then I'd all of a sudden forget that the puppet was supposed to be singing. And then it would be me again. And I just was fighting the puppet. But my boss, Jerry Handorf, may he rest, he saw that there was something there that I could possibly channel or focus that energy in an appropriate way, and said, when you get graduate school done, let me know. So I finished my graduate degree in a year and a half in order to hit the road with Madcap again. And it changed my life. Wow. Absolutely my life. And I toured with them off and on for 10 years. And at that company, then the company was growing. And I happened to just be the person in the room who could sort of do a thing that they needed, such as, hey, boy, can anyone write a sentence? Yes, we are our new communications coordinator. It wasn't that simple, sure. But Like that's how I was acquiring skills. Also teaching. I just happened to be somewhere and they wanted someone to do a workshop. And I thought, well, I love this and maybe I can share it. And I became a teaching artist really on the job. So working at a small puppet theater nonprofit and saying yes to opportunities, gathering arts administration skills and teaching skills as well. I was super fortunate to have about 10 years of that, gathering those things. And from there, I ended up going to a puppetry festival. We were performing, Madcap Productions Puppet Theater performed at the Great Lakes Regional Puppetry Festival in Detroit, a festival of the Puppeteers of America. And I realized there's more puppetry out there. And I was hooked. And I spent then more time just looking at, because of course the internet was harder to come by, but looking for other puppet theater companies wherever I traveled and trying to touch base with folks. And I made a road trip to Atlanta, Georgia. And the thing that was running was XPT. I know the Center for Puppetry Arts through adult puppet theater, not children's puppet theater or family puppet theater, because I made a road trip when my tour was done. And that would have been early days of XPT. And I saw it. And again, so XPT is so important to me as well, because it also framed my definition of adult puppetry, right? It could be slightly messy. It could be in progress. It could be short, but almost going to get to a place where it needs to be longer, right? I really owe a lot to XPT as really lighting that spark within me. From there, then I went back, and with a theater company I was working with, Performance Gallery, we started to find opportunities to put puppetry in it. And that was a direct result of XPT. With the skills gained there and the confidence gained there, other theater companies in Cincinnati started to hire me to do puppetry work as well. And then I ended up teaching at a university. Then education became so much a part of my world in puppetry. And that's what brought me to the Center for Puppetry Art. So it is interesting that I'm a reluctant and accidental puppeteer, and that the journey with XPT is actually so much what put me on this path to create work with Thom and to create work that I'm passionate about.
Do you remember what year XPT that you went to? And do you remember any pieces from that?
I remember meeting Jane Catherine Shaw at the time, and it was and Greg Wallace, and it was both their first XPTs. So this has to be in late 90s. I mean, it was early days for sure. And I do remember this gorgeous lyrical piece with a body puppet, a life-size puppet that was skeletal, draped in black, and the movement was so stunning. And I was doing body puppets at the time with Madcap, a whole different kind, and just thought, oh, that can be a body puppet too. I saw the craziest, most beautiful marionette piece with simple objects. It was almost like a mobile over a baby crib. And then it started to move, and then those things became a marionette, and it was a spider crawling over to a baby crib. Oh, nice. I'm looking at Charles because he's not. It was super freaking cool. Now, I don't mind sharing this if it works, if double checking. Are you seeing a screen share?
Yes.
It says participants can now see your application. So I'm wondering if you see a photograph.
I do.
So these are just some of the personal things that I've been working on in no particular order. Puppet coaching, a production of The African Company Presents Richard III. This was a couple years ago, coaching bodies and life-size shadow puppets to talk about the slave journey. That was the prologue to this piece about the earliest, based on a true story, the earliest, one of the earliest Shakespeare companies producing work was an African-American theater company based in New York City. So this is the prologue up to that.
That's absolutely gorgeous. So what can you explain to us, if you remember? So I see the puppeteers below the, I guess, kind of the faux stage, and then you have the puppets on top of that.
Correct.
What was that made out of?
So Brandon Kirkham is the puppet designer and builder, and we used, so the puppets themselves, these guys were made out of heavy plastic that he used on a bandsaw to cut that out. So he used a bread knife and a bandsaw to cut those darn things out on a super heavy duty black plastic.
That's just gorgeous.
I know that for sure. And these, the humans that you could see, we actually had them process in as the ancestors to a drum beat. Doom, 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 turn, 2, 3, 4, turn, 2, and process back there. Then doom, 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 doom on the final drum beat. They're puppets. came up. So we wanted the humans to be seen because they were spirits of the ancestors that were activating the story. So it's intentional for us. And it was lit with little lanterns at first, and those little footlights that we actually also lit with a fake flame.
I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous and has so much metaphor within it, because not only are you holding up the stages and the puppets, but you're also holding up the ancestors, presenting them. It's just gorgeous.
Thank you. The director, Daryl Harris, was really passionate. I've collaborated with him a lot. So he knew that, because the first thing we ask, and Thom and I do this all the time, is why puppets? If you can't answer that question, don't ask me to do them.
Yeah.
What does a puppet do that a human cannot? What does a puppet do metaphorically, physically, that a puppet cannot? If you cannot do it, just save the idea for later, because it ain't going to work for me. So in this case, it was about that metaphor, the going from the darkness to the light, that he was very passionate about. I said, now you got me. Let's do puppets.
Great.
Puppet coach this production of Lullaby Dragon at Milwaukee Stage First Puppet Company. That was 2 years ago. They were coming out of COVID. And that's just a beautiful little body puppet that they had in the show that I was able to puppet coach. The most amazing thing there is that we found out that the performers in the show were less passionate about puppeteering than the technical team. And because this particular theater company is incredibly collaborative, those are all technicians operating the puppet.
Huh.
And I thought that was just beautiful and brave of them to say, no, let's yield the space. Yeah. These technicians, they know how to give space. They know how to get out of the way so that the actual story can emerge. So the performers yielded, which is beautiful.
Wow.
But I do often find that those who consider themselves technicians or production people can be, of course, as successful, if not more so, than puppet people, than actors, because actors have to let their ego get away a little bit more when behind the stage people don't have to struggle so hard in general to do that.
Sure.
Puppet coach so many productions of Avenue Q. I can't even count anymore at this point in time, mostly through my work at the Center for Puppetry Arts. I teach a lot at thespian festivals, and this is teaching teachers, just some body warm-ups there. Traveled with to Honduras with the Center for Puppetry Arts to teach puppetry in non-English speaking situations. And the puppets, of course, are the best translators in the world. Super fortunate to get to be on the puppet track at Dragon Con as well. And this is Charles, one of our technicians there, and more and much more. Teaching at Dragon Con. Oh, for crying out loud. Yes, that is me puppeteering Tom Servo in the Dragon Con parade with Joel. Oh my gosh, I probably rusted the bot because I was crying tears of joy the entire time. This is Daryl Harris is in the background. He's the director of African Company Presents Richard III. The first picture has nothing to do with that. This is a movement and mask piece that he and I do called Wanted, Freedom, Dead or Alive. And it's bringing to life classified ads of runaway slaves. And we use masks also as puppets to tell that story as these folks are going on their journey again from the Middle Passage through slave ownership into then finally ending with Maya Angelou, We Will Rise. This is the puppet theater company that I began with, Madcap Productions Puppet Theater. That's life-size body puppets. This was actually with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra last March. And I still do special projects work for Madcap 30 years later. It's a really special relationship and I'm super fortunate, but it's a body puppet. Jerry, the builder and director of that company, again, may he rest, he's no longer with us. He did do some designing and working for the Muppets for a while. That's where that aesthetic came in. But that's the aesthetic that I started in, which I think is important when you see how far I've come from that too, in many ways.
And I may have nightmares tonight about that cat.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Slash, you're welcome. No, right? That is exactly that style. Yes, okay. Hello. Yeah, the Peter and the Wolf, that was a cat from Peter and the Wolf. So we did all the animals from Peter and the Wolf when the Symphony Orchestra did their thing. This is for the Cincinnati Fringe years ago. The Body Speaks is a position that's a naked me behind a screen, manipulating a puppet who is puppet built by Kevin Frisch. And the puppet is actually cocooned and then starts to cocoon and wrap himself because he's overhearing things in the world that are making him feel less himself. So parts of his body come off while he does that. And then I emerged from there with giant cocoon with giant wings as well, so that the puppet and I emerge transformed at the end. But yeah, bring on the weird shit. Thank you very much. Lucos, Wade, you may remember this. Andy Galkel was an XPT piece, I think in 2012, my first year at the center. Andy Galkel, XPT director, great artist. This was from his piece, Lucos. Tanner Slick, that's from his XPT piece, The Transmission Project, the year later. So I think that's 2013. Yes, Forgotten Love, the epic Bollywood finger puppet spectacle from XPT 2015, maybe. So this was actually, I just puppeteered for this one as well. Jeff Domke and Jeffrey Zwartjes created a Bollywood finger, it's 2014, a Bollywood finger puppet spectacle that was insane. We had Bollywood voice actors, we had a Bollywood narrator, we had a score written, an original musical theater score written just for the piece. Ask Francis about this too. I've never had more fun than being next to Francis backstage when something fell apart and we were laughing so hard. Just ask her. I don't want to ruin the story, but there's a moment. Ask her about Forgotten Love. Yeah. Ask her about the whale. That's what I'm saying. I teach a lot of teachers, and as much as I don't like googly eyes, they're useful when you're teaching people who need to activate whimsy, because they're called plays for a reason. That's a very proud Aretta and Bo. After the Dragon Con parade, Bo Brown, it was his project. He with Crow T Robot from Mystery Science Theater, teaching ensemble puppetry to kiddos, puppet coaching a production of The Long Christmas Ride Home at Miami University of Ohio. It's a Paula Vogel piece that has in flashback, the children remember themselves as puppets because they're pawns of the parents, they feel. And they also did shadows, and we did Japanese screens. It was a Japanese aesthetic. So the shadow puppets happened behind those Japanese screens as well. I puppet coached and did 3 back-to-back Lord of the Rings shows. So we were with a theater company in Cincinnati. We were the first people to get to the rights to bring to stage the Lord of the Rings stage trilogy. So this is a life-size Balrog. It's 6 people. I don't know if you can even tell what's going on, but 6 people puppeteering that darn thing. That's our Balrog. Those are our Ents, and I'm sorry the pictures are so tiny. These are only ones I could access. Our Ents are stilted actors with arm extensions and articulated fingers. Our horses, those are our beautiful horses with articulated heads on springs from the riders as they were heading into Middle Earth. Our Balrog, which was also glowing in the dark, or a Nazgul, I'm sorry, baby Nazgul is in the center of the picture behind big Nazgul. Blacklight reactive as well. That's a 7-person puppet, that body puppet. That's me as Gollum on the right. Yes, precious. Oh, yes, my precious. And the eyes also lit up when I went from Smeagol. Yes, master needs. These click, click, and the eyes would light up too. The friend who built those puppets now is just retired actually from traveling with Cirque du Soleil doing a props thing. That's Shelob the spider. Children of Eden. We did the naming, which is one of the songs in the musical Children of Eden, where they're naming all the animals. We used all the found objects in the forest to create all the animals. And a shadow puppet piece that Honey Goodenough directed me in for Dragon Con. So those are just some of the things that I've done kind of on my own, either through my work with the center or otherwise, but that's just kind of a little glimpse into the madness that led me here to this man right here.
That's great. Let me backtrack real quickly. So you mentioned that you like to do darker pieces. And that is something that I think most people who have met you and have been in your presence would not expect. Some things I would use to describe you is jubilant, so much energy, lighthearted, always willing to lend a hand to anything. So what is that dichotomy within you, this darkness within, but you present this lightness? What's going on there?
The need for balance. I do think every human needs to find balance in their life in some way. and me finding a safe space to put it. I think a place where I can trust a partner to create and take care of that world. I don't ever want it to replace therapy, nor should it, but it does feel like that's the balance I need in my life. I do think, because I spend so much of my time working with and for children, and have that, again, just needing that balance, right? These amazing little humans, they do have a lot of drama and a lot of story to tell, and kind of soaking up their stories as well, because it's super hard to grow up. It's super hard to figure out who you are. And I'm also absorbing all of their stories. And I think I need somewhere to put that as well. And I also know that for me, having the moments of darkness and stillness, having those moments of a different style of puppet that requires more focus, also is a way for me to just calm the heck down as a human as well.
And she needs that. She needs to calm the heck down.
Well, let's talk with the kind of darker side, brooding character. So Thom, I think the first time we met was probably, I think, if I remember correctly, it was for an XPT piece. Someone was doing a film, and
yes.
You were in that room, and I think that was the first time I had ever met you. Is that right?
Yeah. So, my background was with puppetry, started with building, and I had a good friend who's a comic book artist, and he built puppets for fun, and he built the most amazing puppets, and he would build costumes, and I'm not as prepared as her. I didn't bring any pictures, but his work is stunning. And he taught himself, and this was before internet, right? So this is after high school, before college. I was on kind of a break between, and he and I became friends, and he started teaching me how he was building puppets, and he was using a lot of the same tools we use today, like foam and hot glue were his favorite things to work with. So he was making Muppet style puppets, and so I started to learn with him, and I found myself to get pretty proficient at that. What are you doing? Yeah, okay. So so then, I went off to college and I did my thing, and I did bring
What was college? What was college?
I went to SCAD in the late 80s, when it was when I got there, it was 3 buildings in downtown Savannah, one of which was just the bookstore. So there weren't many classrooms and there weren't many students, but of course now it's massive. But I did study some sculpture and soft sculpture while I was there, and I even presented pieces completely that would probably pass for puppets.
Because you were studying what?
I was studying graphic design. What are you? You just, okay. She'll keep me straight.
Yeah.
So it does.
Yeah.
It does. Okay. So I get back from college, right? And okay, here's a quirky story. So I like to listen to music when I get in the shower. I do. So I turn on the radio. I have one in the bathroom, and I'm in there, and I'm listening to, I think, 96 Rock. And this guy says, "Look, I don't think I'm supposed to say anything, but I think this is so cool." This is the DJ.
Okay.
And he says, "The Muppets are doing an audition down at the center today." That's the abbreviated part. But I'm like, what the? And I grew up unbelievably passionate about the Muppets. I was obsessed. And so I called the radio station. I said, "Could you please tell me what you just said?" And I talked to the DJ, and he said, "Actually, I have a friend who's an actress, and she's going, and I just thought it'd be fun to share it on the air. You can call down to the center to find out what's going on." So I did, and I came down and I auditioned. I did a first round audition where you had to go in and do like ABCs and a little bit of super basic stuff. And it was Steve Whitmire, who was at the time Rizzo the Rat and Wembley Fraggle. And Kevin, help me. Clash.
Who was my trainer at the Muppets. I even forgot to say that I was with the Muppets for a while in LA, because obviously this other stuff is more interesting to me. Interesting because I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Muppets, whatever. Kevin Clash.
So the story is kind of interesting, but I'm not going to dwell on it too much. I passed the audition in a beautiful, exciting way, because I really thought I hadn't. And I was walking out, and I just leaned over to shake Kevin's hand and said, "Can I get your autograph before I go?" And he says, "You're not going anywhere." So I stayed the rest of the day and we did workshops. And then we were sent home to study some more. And we got called back. I'm trying to remember, the events are kind of weird, but what happened was Peter Lentz and I became really good friends. And we were auditioning together at home and studying how to do camera work together. And then we got invited down to Orlando to do a week-long workshop and continue the audition process. And then Jim died. And the deal was that Jim and Disney were going to merge. I don't know if you remember that back in the, when was that? Late 80s. Yeah. And so when he died, the whole deal fell through.
Early 90s.
Yeah, early 90s, right. And so before we got down there, he had passed away. And we had no idea what was going to happen. So we did the week-long workshop, which was amazing. And I got to work with some of the most amazing puppeteers you'll ever meet. And they're still working with the Muppets. A lot of them are. I'm not, clearly. But when the audition was over, we didn't hear anything else. And they had flat out said, you know, with Jim gone, we're not going to pursue this Orlando thing anymore. So I thought, that's it. I'm done. I'll go do what I studied for my career. And Peter Lentz, if you guys know who he is, he used to work here at the center. And now he's he works for the Muppets. He was Walter in the Muppets movie, and he is now Ernie on Sesame Street.
Atlanta boy, proud Atlanta boy.
Wow.
Yeah. So he went off and he struggled, and God bless him. I don't think I could have done it. It's like being an actor in Hollywood or New York, where you wait tables and, you know, do whatever you can to make a buck until you can get another audition. And for the longest time, he would work Sesame Street as a right hand, you know, a support puppeteer or a background. So I watched what he went through, and honestly, I was a little jealous, but mostly I was glad I didn't choose that path. I just don't think I could have struggled through it the way he did. So I ended up, you know, over the course of my career, ending up at a job at the Coca-Cola company with their international advertising department. So overseeing stuff that was global advertising, Coca-Cola, Diet Coke, so forth. And they wanted to bring some of the production in-house. I was doing print production. So they wanted to do stuff in Atlanta. They're like, we're tired of Thom traveling around the world and overseeing photo shoots. Can we do some in Atlanta? So I'm like, all right. So I started to work with talent agents in Atlanta to find talent. And one of them said, let's go to lunch. You know, let me tell you about our company. That's the woman who now owns the People Store, who has always owned the People Store, who is one of the most prominent talent agents here in town.
Yeah.
And so Rebecca and I went to lunch, and she says, tell me something weird about yourself. And I said, I studied with the Muppets. She says, you are kidding. I'm casting a movie with the Muppets. They are specifically looking for puppeteers. I said, what do I have to do? I went home and I made a VHS tape of me doing jokes and lip syncing songs, all the things I knew they would look for. And I sent it to her, and she sent it in, and they said, hey, come on up for a one-night shoot. We got one scene that requires, you know, 100 Muppets. We're bringing in all these people. So I went up to a beach in North Carolina for Muppets from Space, in the scene where the aliens land towards the end of the movie. And I forced my way into the role of Crazy Harry. And that's not kidding. I really was an asshole, and pardon my friend. And was like, no, I really thought this was my one chance to be a Muppet. So I just like, you got to give me a character I recognize. I don't know why they put up with it, but they gave me Crazy Harry, and I got full screen. I was like this, you know, and that was it. I thought, that's it, you know, that's it. I'm done. I can go and live my life happy, whatever. And I went home, and they called me back. They said, can you come do 2 more weeks? And while I was there, they said, hey, can you finish the movie? So I did 6 weeks on Muppets from Space with my old pal, Peter Lentz, and a bunch of other, you know, Frank Oz and Dave Goelz and all the classics. Jerry Nelson was there, and it was amazing, just amazing. It's a dream come true to get that. So I come back to Atlanta after that, and of course I think I'm gonna just work in puppets for the rest of my life. And of course that doesn't work, and I have to get a real job, and I get back into graphic design, and I'm doing great. I'm working in an ad agency, and I'm just going back to my life. I turned to my wife, and you know, we had just had a baby, and I'm like, we're just that was a great pipe dream and I lived it. Let's move on.
Hmm.
And then some goober, I think it was Steph, maybe hooked me up. I'm pretty sure it was Stephanie who told Bo Brown that I existed.
Oh, this is all your fault, Stephanie.
It's all
Stephanie, do you want to talk to this? Do you want to say something about this?
No, I mean, I just, I am one of those people that knows a lot of people, and I love to like share that people I know are interested in doing something, and I'm like, oh, you should talk to so and so. I love making connections.
Nice.
So that's probably how that happened.
Bo rings me up and says, I thought I knew every puppeteer in Atlanta, and here he has a guy who's been with the Muppets, and I was asked to go and work on his little film about Medusa, which is where I met the great Wade Tilton, Raymond Carr, and Chuck. Who else was there? Chuck Robinson, Amy Rush, just a lot of great puppeteers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget it. So this is where this catalyst comes to XPT, is that Raymond turned to me and he said, if you really want to do this, and if you want to really prove to yourself you can do this, you have to do an XPT piece. And I took it to heart and I really thought it through. And I talked to people I know, and I just decided I need a subject that really means something to me. And you know where this went. And I ended up doing a piece about 9/11.
So let's go ahead and start there, because correct me if I'm wrong, is this the first time you and Aretta had even met before, or had you met previously?
No, we met at a guild meeting.
The Atlanta Puppetry Guild meeting and
Okay.
Atlanta Puppetry Guild meeting. So but we'd never worked together. So it was.
I have to give props to my wife. She's always looking out for things for me to do. Maybe she's trying to get me out of the house, but she's always looking for things for me to do.
Right over that. You take him back. Right.
So she stumbled on the guild and she's like, did you know that there's a guild meeting happening in our own neighborhood? Lee Bryan lives in my neighborhood, who is part of the guild and a puppeteer, that puppet guy here in Atlanta. Yeah. And we went to the meeting and had such a blast that we decided we would keep going to them. Yeah, so that's where I met Aretta.
And this is the Puppet Guild meeting that meets at the center, correct?
Yeah, it is the same meeting, but at the time they were doing house hopping for some reason. It was not until I think Aretta started offering up space here for the guild before we actually ended up doing it here. Yeah, so I started making more puppet friends after that. But then, so I don't know, was that after I did? That might have been after I did the piece with you, Wade, the Medusa piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think Lori was just trying to keep me involved. She saw how much I enjoyed doing that, so she was trying to keep me involved.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I was skirting around doing more puppetry. I wasn't doing much. I'm grateful for the team that I met on that movie because they changed my life. All of you did.
So let's go back to you finally deciding to do this piece about 9/11. It's called Learning to Fly, by the way, in case people that have not seen that who are here. Was it so? What I remember is that it was you and your director who also, you guys went back and forth and kind of co-wrote the piece together. Is that correct? Or did you write it first and then she kind of came in and rewrote some things? Or
yeah, she was more my what you might call a dramaturg, although I did all my dramaturgy. So she was more of an editor, I guess. She wanted to be a dramaturg in this role, but I was obsessed. What most dramaturgs do is research, and they check you against, especially when you're doing something about a true story. But I was obsessed with the research, so I did all my own research. So she helped me because I'd never written a play before. So she helped me nuance it into something better than what I was making it. And since then, I've had many people who have added their voices, including yourself, who've helped me get this into a better place. Yeah, but it was all from my, yeah, you want to share that? Okay. So this is a moment from Learning to Fly.
It has now, and Tom can mention this too. So this, I think, is then the first project that we worked on as our new partnership officially, because after you did this version of it.
Well, this isn't the first version of it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's what this is. So this is a different version than folks might be familiar with. It's different than the XPT version, because then.
Aretta and I went.
I'm definitely going to get to that, but let's go ahead and continue with the first version first.
Okay. Yeah. So, I think I wanted to meet the expectations of XPT. Number one, what's experimental about my piece? And I really was into the production. I knew what I wanted to do production wise. I was testing it with miniatures at home, trying to make it all work. The trick here, guys, was that I was doing reverse check puppetry. So the background was white. The puppeteers were wearing all white and the puppets were black. And then I put a white scrim on the front of it and projected video. And so the question then becomes, and there were even tech people here. Yeah, that's a good one. That's more like so even tech people here at the center were telling me that probably wasn't going to work.
Yeah. So let's just stop right there, Tom, sorry. So where did this idea come from? Because I gotta say, it's probably the one piece that I hear most about for the people who actually got to see it. It just has such a striking visual about it that my wife, she continually talks about, and it's probably her favorite piece that she's ever seen at any of the XPTs. And it's mainly has to do with just the visual of it. So where did that come from?
And these are images now too from that original piece that I found that I'm showing.
So you're asking me where the visual idea came from?
Yeah.
Or what are you asking?
The visual idea of doing the kind of the reverse.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think when I thought of this, the 9/11, Wade, you and I are of an age, and I'm sure there's some people here who have memories of 9/11. I'm not going to call anybody else out, but those of us with gray hair remember. It had really heavy impact on me. And the thing that really, drove home was the jumpers. I just couldn't come to grips with that. And I wanted in a way so I'm getting back to the core of the story first. I wanted to understand it. I want to understand how you make that decision. If you're in a burning building, do you choose to, and you're on the 140th floor, do you choose to try and survive in the fire, or do you just run out the window, knowing that your chances of surviving in the fire are slim to none? So I really wanted to explore it. So when I started to do the research and I started to look into it, everything about that world felt white. The towers looked white. They were white. The interiors were all white. The people's desks were white. It was just a very bright white situation. So then when I decided to think about how I could do the puppets, it immediately just became a black and white piece for me. I never once thought about color in our space. So it was always going to be black and white. And I guess I just pictured this perfectly in my head, that it was going to be all white with some projection and these black puppets. And I consulted with people, and for the most part, everyone, even theater people that I talked to, I was lucky enough, I know quite a few people in town that helped me try to understand. And theater people were even saying, I'm not sure this is possible. But I went to see a show at the Alliance, and it was, I can remember the name of the show, I'm so sorry. And I remember how freaking excited I was, because it was this house. The set was this big house. It was a 2-story house, full size, right? And they would rotate it on the stage, so you could be on the outside, you could be like a big dollhouse, and people would be in the house and whatever. And at the beginning, there was a giant scrim. I mean, massive scrim across the whole thing, right? And there was a logo on the front of the name of the show. And I'm seeing the set, and it's all well lit, and I'm seeing the scrim, and I'm seeing the logo, and I realize this is doable.
And this is 10 years ago. Is what projections in theater weren't as much of a thing. It was 10 years ago.
So I immediately went home, and I started finding any white translucent fabric I could find, and started projecting on it with a little video projector I had, and then putting things behind it, black things behind it, you know, just miniature version, but really simplistic. I probably still have videos of it around, of me testing, putting like a shadow puppet in there between scrim and a white background and projecting on it and seeing if I could see it. I did get some great assistance from the guys at the center. Who was tech at that time? Who's not here now?
Roy was here.
Gregory is the one who said, you're doing it all right, but you got to get the light off the back of the scrim. So there's an LED strip that was just above our stage area. And because our stage area was 3 floors, right? So we had our area, and then we had an area above and an area below. But within our stage area, there was a strip of light at the top of our ceiling that would shine down on the puppets. And what I had to learn was that I needed that to tilt away from the scrim. So as long as we had, what do you call them in theater? Something to block the light. So we'd have a strip behind the light. Yeah. And then the light, and we tilted it away from the screen. The light never bothered the back of the screen. And projection was, it just went beautifully. And, you know, my idea here was, of course, we reinforced the visuals by having the upper and lower floor. They always stayed dark. And so even in that picture that you just saw, the brightness up there was all from projection. So, so I could maintain some level of strength that I might not get in the center. So you're hearing the production side of me. This is how I get excited and crazy about production.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about a really nice partnership, which I know we'll talk about more in a minute, is that's why we're such a good blend.
Yeah.
Aretta's a great storyteller. She is phenomenal, and she knows how to force me to think about story. And I'm the one who's always thinking about production. Like, how can I make this look more cool? You know?
Well, let me stop you right there, since we're talking about stories. And for people who have not seen this piece, this might be going a little too deep. I personally want to kind of pick your brain about this. And that is, so you're dealing with 9/11. You don't really need to raise the stakes at all. The stakes are already raised to begin with. What is your decision process in having the relationship of the puppets within the piece? So for the people who haven't seen it, you know, it's a typical office setup. So these 2 puppets could just be boss and assistant, 2 co-workers talking about whatever, but you decide to kind of go with a situation where 2 co-workers, but they also are entangled in a relationship,
an inappropriate
relationship, because at least one was married. I can't remember, one or both are married.
You know, we've changed the storyline since then, and I can't.
Okay.
Do you remember? They were
One was.
One was. Yeah. Where did that come from? So my idea was, in the end, what I'm trying to do is release these people from their lives in a way that they can feel okay to jump, right? They can take a step and go, all right, I've lived a good life. I'm going to go. Well, these 2 people have not. They're now living with the guilt. They have their concerned families at home. They've been they've been cheating. They've been a lot of breaking morals and misbehaving. And so there's a lot of guilt they carried. And the idea in my story, and what I tried to achieve for XPT, was for them to absolve each other's guilt and their own guilt, so that they could go to heaven, so to speak. They could die in peace. Yeah. So that's where Learning to Fly, the name, comes from, is really learning to let go of all your earthly things that have held you back, held you down, made you feel guilty, so that you can ascend. So that's where that came from. And it was, and as we progress, I'll go ahead and say that when we progressed the story, it was something about that story that Aretta didn't care for. And we went We went round a few times because I wanted to hold on to it. Yeah, but in the end, it's still the same idea that they need to kind of let go of earthly things.
And this is, I don't know if you can see this share right now, Wade, this kind of answers that question too, is that at some point, these are, you know, some of the thoughts that we have when we do our process, get back to the essence of what's the story that needs to be told? Always going back to that kernel. And in discussing learning to fly after XPT and what would happen next, Thom kept saying it really was about hope and choice in the face of death. Going back to that, then expanding it to power of hope and choice in the face of death on a day that changed the world. So getting it back to its essence and removing the other stuff that maybe didn't seem as important to Thom's initial, right? Into your initial, the drive for it.
Yeah, but I still feel, yeah, no. When we talk about hope, it's deeper than that. That simple word kind of tells the story of what I was saying about absolution, which is really at the heart of the story. It's the only way that I feel cathartic after performing it or watching it. When I think about those people who jumped or fell to their death, I'm gonna say jumped. The people who actually made the decision to leave the building. You know, I just feel that they, in a flash of a moment, had somehow come to this. I have to believe that they came to some kind of personal absolution. That they just looked inward and said, "It's okay," you know, it's okay.
Yeah. It's really interesting because obviously, you know, I don't think anyone would say that just because you cheat on your spouse, you deserve to die. That would be ridiculous, right?
Right.
But you are almost setting up the audience to maybe not like these characters.
Well, that's the part that Aretta was driving home, is like, we've got to make them more everyday people, every human, right?
But not lean away from the darkness. Just sort of find that darkness is in every human. It doesn't take one particular act to define darkness in a person. And then I love that too, at some point, Thom got even deeper listening to the 911 calls and flawed but relatable, Stephanie. You know, really looking to the 911 calls, going day by day in the journals and realizing that, you know, these are of course real people. And we even got it down into the research. We know who these folks, where they worked, what their college experience was, what floor they were on. And
we know lots about their background that we created based on people that I researched. And to tell you the truth, I have listened to every call at least twice. Every call that came out of the tower, every voice message. I've listened to all the police and radio calls, and I've watched every inch of footage available, just so I knew that I was getting everything right and I wasn't mistreating the history of these people. So these two people, although they're not exact people, they're real people. We really went into it, and
XPT gave the opportunity, right, to feel like that the story had to be, because I heard somewhere that it was a story that had to be written, and it ends up now being the story already was written and we just found it and put it together. So I think that's what XPT did, right, is creating a script, creating a 10-minute show. Yes, that was important to get it started, but I know some of these conversations have been about it actually is now more, I think, more authentic, more truthful, because it's not a show written for XPT. It is taking these real stories and honoring them. And it's funny that in making it more able to fit everyone's story, it's actually become so incredibly personal, hasn't it? Like the more relevant.
Yeah, I have to tell you this way, when I step away from it, it's funny when I step away from it for too long, because we'll perform it again. We've performed it several times since, of course.
It's now 43 or 44 minute piece. Last time we did it was Orlando Fringe, I think.
Was that the last
maybe
time?
I don't remember.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, and we learned some valuable lessons there too. Boy, we have learned some great lessons. Here's one of the best though. We went to workshop it in Maine. We took a week at a residency in Maine at Celebration Barn, which is a phenomenal place to study, because it's a place that's built around movement and theater. Yeah, is that putting it well? Yeah, it's amazing. And there were people there in residency doing, literally doing performance art theater, and there were people doing juggling. It was really unique. So we had this the attic of this barn to ourselves, huge space, and we workshop the heck out of that. And at the end, the goal was to perform our pieces for not only each other, but inviting some locals to come and watch. You know where this is going. Yeah, so we performed our piece, and
But just so you all know, if you do the Celebration Barn, it's called an incubation residency. They're very good about saying, we don't expect you to come away with a flawless finished piece. We expect you to share your journey and where you are, because a lot of residencies don't do that, don't give you the freedom about process over product. Celebration Barn gives you process over product. And we were able to check in with our mentor every day. What have you discovered? What have you learned? And so when we say we're performing it, it was actually a place we usually get, you know, the terrified thing of what have you done? How have you spent your time here? But we really, I do feel like we were able to at any point in time say, whoops, that didn't work. And it was okay to share with whatever we had. Don't you feel that way?
Yeah. And much more so than another residency we did. I just think we got some great feedback, some really helpful things that, like when you see our face here now, I think that's where that happened, is the guy said, look, we'd prefer to see your faces. Because in the original piece, we had white hoods on. And we've gone back and forth on talking about that, but we always end up with our exposed faces now. Anyway, so we performed the piece at the end, and there's an audience of about maybe 15, 20 people. It wasn't very big. And then everybody moves on and they're getting ready for the next piece. There's going to be like a 30, 45-minute break between pieces. And Aretta and I are kind of packing up, and there's one woman left behind. And she comes up and she says, I just want you to know you honored that very well. And I said, oh, thank you. And she said, I'm a survivor of 9/11. And I was like, what? So turns out didn't she work at the place of our people? She worked at the place where we designated our people to be. And that particular day, she works in HR. She went to the downtown office. She normally worked in the tower. So on that day, she was somewhere else. So not only did she see many, many people die and miss losing her own life, as a member of the HR for that company, she talked to everyone afterwards, all the families. She had to deal with it, and she still, to this day, is probably dealing with it, of those families. It's insane. And the fact that she felt we respected the time and treated it with the honor that it deserved.
And the puppetry, I think we always go back to the puppetry, the why puppets, the fact that it allowed her enough distance. Let me go to that, because that's really important. Aretta gave us that mantra, and I'm sure she didn't start it, but for our company, our little company, the question has to be why puppets. There is no reason to do a show that can be done by humans if you don't have a reason to use puppets, right? If you're just doing puppets because it's a puppet show, you know, it's probably cheesy and it's probably not going to do anything special. What we're trying to do here is look at it and go, okay, why puppets? And we started with learning to fly. Why puppets? Well, the main reason why puppets is you could not put actors on stage dying like that. The audience wouldn't be able to handle it. They wouldn't be happy about it. There would be nothing gained from watching that. So by putting it into puppets, we gave them a sense of separation, right? There was a way to relate to the puppets, but not get involved in their lives. So it was a really great answer for us. And now everything we do, we have to answer that question. It could be as simple as the character has to fly. Right, it can be practical as well as aesthetic, but still we always have, and then that'll also dictate the style of puppet that we choose to use. And that's just a thing that I know XPT has given me an opportunity, and 8 XPTs through all different styles of puppets. And it does allow you to answer that question or get skills in each to understand the power of each, right? Is it the power through movement? Is the power through visual image? Is the power through collaboration? Is the power through simplicity? And XPT That's why I would suggest do XPT a lot and try different styles each time. If you're called, or say yes to helping other people, because then you understand the why. Oh, they got your little space bubble on.
Yes, I made these little space bubbles for the puppet. But
Yeah, so that's there's my Trish.
yeah,
While you're showing this, let me ask you, because what makes you guys unique versus a lot of XPT pieces, and there's a few of them, but it's a kind of a unique thing, is that there is a life outside of XPT. So you guys found a path to go on. So was that because of your connections? Was that an easy thing for you guys? Was that difficult? How did you navigate trying to find other ways to perform outside of XPT?
well, that's a really great question. When we start to think about it, where did we go?
It's always been a part of my world as a theater maker. Always been a part of my world. Fringe festivals. I've now done 9 or 10 fringe festivals. I'm very passionate about the fringe theater festival circuit. And I think they are super puppet friendly, or they can be, because they're multi-genre type things, and you have adventurous audience as well as adventurous artists. You have to vet them very carefully because, every one of them is different, and finding puppet friendly venues and finding ways that you can afford to do it and not, we don't need to make money. We got a little in the bank for our company, by the way. Now it's called 10048. And that is the zip code of the
World Trade Center.
World Trade Center.
So the World Trade Center was unique in itself that it had its own zip code.
Yeah.
And so if you see our logo, and our name, that is really the mailing code bar for 10048. And this one's in black and white, so you don't see it. But usually these two, one of these two, I think it's these two, are red.
Scroll up, look at our project history. What does it start with? XPT. Right. And I just think that's a super important thing, because it allowed us a language to work together. It was not easy. This piece, if I can be frank, almost didn't make it past XPT or make it past the second, because as is going to happen with XPT, with some of the folks in the space, even, you have to answer the question, is it done? Are we done?
It's never done.
Okay, yeah. Well, for some projects, right? It's okay if XPT is quote unquote enough. But if you leave XPT thinking there's still more story to tell, that kind of haunts you. And we've done pieces for XPT that definitely were done, right? And that's okay. But if it still haunts you, if there's still more story to tell, there are ways to do it. That said, because it was a different combination of people coming out of XPT with learning to fly, the project almost didn't go anywhere else, because when you do an XPT piece, you make a baby, right? And there are lots of parents involved, or lots of parental figures involved. So who gets custody after? That is an important conversation to have. And it's an important conversation to consider even now in your process. As you go forward, I don't think there's a right or wrong or an expected answer, but who has custody after XPT? First of all, are we done? Is it done? Yes or no? If the answer is no, it is not done, be ready to ask that question. Whose project is it, right? And who is the one that has the sense that more story needs to be told? So
originally when you came into, and we'll move past, this will be the last question about this show. We'll move past that and go on to some of the other shows.
Okay.
But so at the end of that XPT, I could only assume that you got very positive feedback from the audience and probably from the administration at the center and stuff like that. Obviously you knew that people liked it. They enjoyed it. They enjoyed the piece. So at that point, is that when, Thom, you decide that I want to continue this? Is it because of this new budding relationship with Aretta, and Aretta's galvanized to push it forward to something else? Take me through that whole thought process.
There was an interim that was a breakup situation, like she's talking about. Who owns the piece, right?
Yeah.
The dramaturg I was involved with made my life very difficult. The piece was all my concept. I wrote most everything. She enhanced some things. So for a while we were talking about how we were going to do it, and she insisted on me stop puppeteering and to just direct, and to get other puppeteers to do it. And that was it. That's what broke the straw that broke the camel back. I just was like, I'm not going to stop puppeteering. I'm too close to this. I have to be a part of this. In the end, it was just one of many things, you know, but that was the one big piece. So we went separate ways, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And in the interim, you know, Aretta was always a part of the project, and I would lean on her personally. Sadly, she was slightly involved in some of that mess because it involved the center. And so anyway, to get past that, Aretta and I regrouped, and I just said, I really want to do this thing.
But we did another XPT piece in the interim.
We did.
And figured out our part.
That's right. Also about death, by the way.
Yes.
Well, there is that.
Yeah. Again, I'm always looking, for me, it's a cathartic thing. We do tend to do those kinds of shows. Our most recent show is about mental illness. So we do like to dig in deep and try and find the right answers, right? Or the answers that help us and others, maybe.
Right, but it was another XPT piece in the interim that allowed us to galvanize how we work together.
It really did help.
And as a partnership, so that when there was a glimmer of hope that learning to fly could go somewhere else, we already knew sort of how we could do that, how we could make that happen. And it was, again, XPT 2015 with Deus Ex Machina.
And yeah, I think what's really cool about that is,
involved in that.
yeah, it was my idea. And again, I think I started with production first, which was a really bad idea. You know, it happens to us all. Come on, I bet every one of you. I even told Charles the other day, you got to be careful if you start thinking about production before you really dig in the story. What did you forget? I did. I said it to Charles. I have a hard time following it. Yeah. Yes. So it's so easy to say, I want to do, you know, a crazy little puppet in a world of machines. And so we did it. But the great thing I learned working with Aretta is she's just such a great director. She has a really good eye for movement and yeah, there's a lot of other things here.
I don't know if there's anything else from that one piece yet, though.
Yeah, you can just keep flipping. Why am I there? That's horrific. So
It's in our sizzle reel. But
yeah, it was a weird piece, I'll admit, and it did need more work, but I didn't love it enough to keep pushing it. We had a great time doing it. The puppets were fun to perform.
yeah, you can grab the puppet. So the basic idea too was that it's the little folks that are moving into the Deus Ex Machina, right? The machine of the gods, making the choices as to when it's time to pass. So it was all the little creatures getting the memories together in the machine, you know, resting on the videos, snap, a lot of different pictures of humans, and it lands on one, and then all the little figures activate within the machine to gather memories. But there are two clowns out front, humans with a faux camera zoning in on the smaller places of the stage and projecting on the larger. But of course, we pre-recorded the larger stuff. But yeah, it was getting back to story all the time, and we had such a good time butting heads over that. Really, it is at every project we will almost kill each other.
Yeah, but it's so worth
Couple
it,
of
right?
times, yeah, all the time.
Once you mop the blood up, it's really worth it.
Absolutely. We will, because again, coming at it. So, you know, even the notes that we said, you know, working together on projects, what do you need to do? You need to work with people different than you are, as difficult as it is, right? To complete each other's skill sets.
Night and day.
We are night and day.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, that piece definitely had kind of a almost like a Fraggle Rock homage about it.
That feel, yeah.
Which I really enjoyed. Let us, because we're about 7:09 right now. I don't want to keep everyone too late. So let me jump real far ahead. I know there's a lot of things in between, but the last thing that I saw you guys work on over at 7 Stages for the Fringe Fest, which was your interpretation of Alice in Wonderland. How did that come about?
Yeah, that's a good question. How did that come about?
Some pictures. Creative City Immerse. You can speak to that while I get some pictures.
Yes, right. So it started when we were invited to do this thing in Orlando. That's a big what is it like? It's a big arts festival, right? And it's mostly entertainment arts. So it's people doing dance, theater, bands playing. There are some installation pieces, but mostly it's people performing something. And so we were invited by some friends of Aretta to come down and be a part of their experience, which was so freaking cool. And it was a series of tents that you went through, and you had this experience kind of like an old carnival, and every tent had a different experience in it. And ours was shadow puppetry, and the theme of the whole event was Alice in Wonderland, but Tom Waits' version of Alice in Wonderland. So you were supposed to be influenced by the music and lyrics that Tom Waits did on his album called Alice, which was pretty amazing. And although sadly it didn't turn out the way we had wanted, thanks to a hurricane, we were we were able to put on an amazing show. And
so here are pictures from that. It was called Creative City Immerse. And again, my friends Kevin and Becky, their pitch was to take up a whole block and do an interactive multidisciplinary take on Tom Waits's Alice in Wonderland, or Alice, so that we just decided to do a shadow puppet one for our little part of the interactive maze. And so it's interesting that it began as someone else saying, do an Alice in Wonderland, a dark, shadow take on it. So here was our part. We projected on the back of the tent. And that was, a portion of it out front. So these are some pictures, that overhead stuff. So it began as just this 5-minute or so repeatable thing as people wandered through the maze. So it began there. But again, after that, we asked ourselves the question, it's the thing that we do now. Is it done? The answer was no. Does shadow puppetry fit the story? Absolutely. Light and dark, Alice, above, below. We did some research, found out that Lewis Carroll and the struggles with mental illness, it was his god niece, who had some struggles with mental illness, and Lewis Carroll wrote some of that in order to try to reach her. Right. So then we're like, oh, now puppetry and darkness and light make even more sense. So again, the question was, are we done? No. Does puppetry work? Absolutely. It lets us go on that journey. Then what style of puppetry? Shadow puppetry. And then we applied for some residencies to keep trying to work on the piece.
Yeah, and the thing that excited me the most about it is when we decided that it was going to be about mental health, because in Orlando it wasn't, right? It was just about the album. So when we decided that it was going to be about that, I got really excited about the amount of research I was going to get to do, which I really enjoy doing. And making it fit the story, and vice versa, the story fit it. So what we did was we pulled excerpts from the story of Alice, and each character represented a different malady, a different issue.
Health malady.
Yeah. So, and Alice is confronting each one because she's the one who really has the malady. She's down there trying to figure out what's wrong with her. And her guide is the rabbit. And in the end, the rabbit, shows her the way out, shows her that she's learned how to take this on, and now she can go back to the real world and deal with it.
Yeah, it was interesting for the people who didn't get to see it. It wasn't just a straight retelling of the story of Alice in Wonderland, that you took fragments from the story itself and then reinterpreted into this kind of mental health issues that you were working with.
Yeah, we've had the pleasure of sharing it a couple times since too, and it continues to evolve, which is also awesome.
Yeah, we took that one most recently to the to a puppetry festival in September outside of Des Moines, Iowa. It was fun to do it for other puppeteers too, because they were even interested in the why more than we imagined, which is great. Oh, why shadow puppets? Oh, it fit great for that story, the black and white, and the so it was kind of, I think, sort of gratifying that even puppeteers forget sometimes, obviously, to ask the why question. We all do.
And it also gave me a chance as a guy who loves production to experiment and try new things. I had just seen a movie, and now I can't remember the name of it. In case you don't know me that well, but I'm a huge fan of time travel. That's what my tattoos are all about. And I saw this time travel movie Yeah, so here we got some scenes from it, but we actually use puppets. We use Aretta as the Alice in the beginning.
And that's over video.
So we would use video. We used overhead projections. Yeah, and sometimes, like in this case, we had Alice performing something, and then on the other screen, we made a larger version of it.
Turtle, Queen of Hearts.
Yeah, Queen of Hearts. Loretta put her face on the overhead, which was very hot. She always complained about that. And I just said, put your face down. All right. And then Duchess throwing dishes, which is probably our most difficult gag. And this is the one I'm talking about where I watched a time travel movie. And it was the idea that it was kind of like an infinity room, right? Where you can just keep seeing and keep seeing. So what we did was we marched in each of these frames, and the tea party would happen in a frame, and then it would happen in the next frame, and it would happen in the next frame. The whole idea was the circle of time there. But yeah, these are all the scenes from our most recent piece.
So as you guys go forward with the company, it seems like, will it always just be you two? I mean, when you think about the idea of like taking things out of town and traveling, that seems to be the most prudent, the most economical, is just to have you two, and to do that, because you're not having to deal with so many schedules. It's just you two that you're having to deal with. And just like I said, it's a lot more economical. Do you guys bring in help for designing as well, or is it always just you two?
Well, and we certainly lean into all kinds of folks. I mean, Jen Kimball, thank goodness, was
yeah, that's true.
With Q Lab, right? So we are so lucky to have a village, but it is true that it really comes down to practicality, I think. That it's only been two right now, certainly not because we don't lean into or want other people to help, right? And we've had Chuck Robinson come and watch rehearsals and give us feedback. Charles has done the same, and Wade. So it takes a village, right?
We had a costumer come in and help us do some costumes for one of our XPT pieces. We had an artist do some piece for a residency we did in New York.
Some real quick.
You know, we needed some backgrounds painted for a piece, and I have a friend in San Diego who just loves what I'm doing, and he's like, "Here, let me do it. I'll paint it for you. How can you say no?" So it's just really, simple ideas, but these progress and they become things, and they were really, oh, you can't see them, or can you?
Yeah.
No, we can see them.
Okay. I don't know what I'm seeing on her screen. Anyway, so yeah, we do reach out. Sometimes we'll even just go on the web and buy things instead of build them, and then dress them up to get to where we are.
Piece for the Cincinnati Fringe. We did tabletop work with also with.
And I have a friend who's an artist who makes felt art, F-E-L-T, felt art out of felt. And she's so amazing. And I challenged her to make a puppet. So she made this guy.
That's our Llama Llama.
Okay. So yeah, that's little Tommy. Gotcha. And he operated, with two fingers down here and this on your wrists. And he can walk around. There's a screw-in headpiece, so you can operate with the other hand, and he turns. So yes, we do reach out sometimes. I love to do the building. I mean, that's where I got started. I still love it. When I can do it, I'll do it. But I'm not afraid to ask for help. I'm not. I mean, Wes and them, who are now, what are their names again? Daniel and Trish, their names have changed. They have gone through several iterations, and I've consulted several people on how to build them.
These magnets on our fingers to have them walk.
So the big takeaway here is we went to a festival in Canada, just outside of Montreal. We took all of us, the whole team that did the show at XPT. So it was eight of us total.
Because there were human actors as well as puppeteers.
Right.
6 puppeteers and then
two humans, which we got rid of that part, by the way. So we went up there, and it was interesting because we would perform it for each other, same kind of thing. They would do their things, we would do our thing, and we had this big round table, and people would comment on each other's pieces, and you would do it one at a time. All right, let's talk about Thom and Aretta's piece, or whatever. Let's talk about learning to fly. And boy, they don't hold back, man. I mean,
that's Canadian.
It was pretty rough. It was pretty brutal. And the guy I respected most, who runs what is the name of the
Les Sages Fous, which is
If
the
you
wise
haven't-
fools.
If
Their
you
work
haven't
is
seen their work, look it up. It's SAGES.
FOUS.
Yeah.
Les 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 Sages Fous.
Look it up and you'll see why I love them so much. So this guy looks at me and says, I could do it with 2 people. And I'm looking around at my 7 other people and I'm going, how the heck do you do that? And that was a heavy influence on me. And then when Aretta said, we're going to have to figure out how to make this as small as possible so we can take it places. So in the end, yes, what we're trying to do is keep it compact to us 2. We don't foresee bringing other people along to perform. We will enlist help in production, pre-production, but in the end, yeah.
Well, and places only want to pay for 2 people. I mean, that is certainly what we have found out, that we've had the good fortune performing at several fringe festivals, theater festivals. We've done, I don't know, a dozen or so. And it really does, the money that they have, they're more likely to pay for lodging, meals, and will make more money. And we're not trying to make money. We're just trying to keep feeding it back into the company to create.
Yeah. I mean, in worst case scenario, I want to break even, right? We're doing it for the love of puppetry.
Right.
So if we make money, we have an account, we just throw it in there. It's not for either one of us.
Mhm.
It's to, buy more sheets of paper to cut up or whatever we need. Yeah, it really is. Or yeah, we got to save up for a projector now.
Are you guys presently working on anything new? Or getting ready for a festival coming up?
There's one piece. Can I talk about it?
Mhm.
Okay, so there's a piece I did in a slam a while back. I came up with a piece for the slam, and it was again, it was Bunraku style puppet. What I did was I built this black, he's a rod. It's made of rods, right? Literally just pieces of dowels. So, but what I was making was a skeleton, and coming out of this skeleton, right, that there's a piece of wood for the head, piece of wood for the body. Do you have a picture?
No,
Okay.
It's in our video. It's in our sizzle reel.
So, and then I made pieces of paper that were shapes of anatomy, like chest plates and a face and biceps. And so all the different pieces, the hips, so it's recognizable. And I stuck them on these nails that were sticking out of all this wood. So now I have this white puppet made of paper, made of pieces of paper. And the piece started with, it was a simple slam piece. Aretta's sitting there and she's trying to write this something.
Well, it started with the visual. There was no story. And
that's right. It started with this idea that I had this puppet made of white paper with,
and I said, why?
Why? So anyway, we got to the story and she's writing a note, right? And she keeps crumpling it up, throw it away. And then how did we switch gears?
And then you hear, I want you to know that I'm happy for you.
So Aretta gets up with a microphone and a cord, and she's singing this song karaoke style. And up from the crumpled paper comes this puppet, and it took 3 of us to perform it, Bunraku style. And she's singing to the puppet as the puppet's coming to life and realizing it's alive. So it's trying to understand its surrounding itself. Eventually, it crawls up the microphone cord to get closer to her.
We use the microphone cord as a tightrope to get close to me. You know.
And then
down on you in the theater. Rah! And then there's the Dear John letter.
In the end, yeah, it was the Dear John letter that came to life.
A revenge piece.
And then at the very end of the song, where she says, "You ought to know," the puppet is tearing itself apart. So it's pulling all the paper apart, and then "You ought to know," and the puppet falls back, and paper goes everywhere. And it just looked. It looked great. I was so proud of it. And Bo came up to me and said, "This is what you should be doing.
Yeah, we want to do.
You need to be doing this from now on." So we called the piece "Torn." That's kind of the working title, "Torn." Yeah. And we really want to stretch it out. We want to turn it into a piece that we can take on the road to festivals. So that's the one I'm most excited about right now.
But keep an ongoing list, XPT people, because you're going to have to, and the phrase literally is, and I mean, no, and I'm sure Wade has already done this for you. You're going to have to kill your babies. This is 10 minutes. So you will have so many things in those pieces that you have to let go. Write them on a separate list, because we have an ongoing list of projects that we want to, and they come out of seeds of XPT pieces, where scenes that didn't work, or ideas that didn't work, or stories that didn't work. Keeping that ongoing list has really been a beautiful way for us to then let something go, because we know we can get back to it later, but keep that piece 10 minutes tight and simple. You have 10 minutes to tell your story. What is the thing that you want them to leave thinking, feeling, or knowing? Go back to that one sentence. And if nothing doesn't, that's our opinion. And if it doesn't fit that, get rid of it for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did want to say this. I find a lot of my inspiration just listening to music. I'll get a song and it will spark a visual in my head, and I'll play that song over and over until I can get it out of my head and figure out what it is I'm thinking. Also, Aretta brings poetry to the table that she's fallen in love with, and we have talked about interpreting some of that. And most recently, I haven't even talked to you about this, but I've gotten into some spoken word stuff that's just unbelievable. I'm like, I'm going to try and write to some of these people that I'm admiring doing online spoken word and see if they'll let us use their poetry. So there's always other things, and it's so great to have a partner now that I feel so comfortable with and know what her reaction is going to be when I bring up something.
But we will take that time away after an intense project. We take a month or 6 weeks to not talk to each other.
We do.
We really do. We really do, because again, every piece, and we probably have been there for it, you know, we are each so passionate about what we bring to it that we butt heads. So we have to create rules in the space that say, when do we walk away from each other?
Yeah.
But so I think that's why we've still been doing things 9 or 10 years later, is because we produce when we're passionate, we produce when we have time, and we always have a list of things. We look at residencies. Everyone should go on the Creative Capital website and get their list of residency and artist residency experiences, because you'll get that email every Friday, and it just reminds you there are ways and places to go create. Give yourself the gift of time away to create. And Creative Capital, their list of artist residencies, has been a huge inspiration for us.
You'll be surprised how inexpensive they can be. I mean, yes, you're probably going to pay a little something. There's also ways to get support for you to go. But I highly recommend this experience. Many of them have mentors. It's just a great way to, it's a lot, in some ways, it'll be a lot like XPT. You'll have great mentors like Wade. You'll have other artists working there who can share their ideas, much like XPT. But to have it for a week where everybody's living in the same space is really wonderfully intensive.
Right. And Charles is nodding because he's also done the National Puppetry Conference at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center. I mean, that's all puppeteers. I think that's great. We actually benefit better from not having all puppeteers there, because it gives us an objective audience to understand the imagery and metaphor of puppetry, or why, or the clarity of the visual message that puppetry tells. So we've personally seek out ones that aren't all puppet centric, because we do tend to do multimedia stuff anyway, with a combination of human actors and puppets and video and music. So it does help us to look for a cohort. So when we narrow our things down, we look for multi-artist cohorts to try to go to.
Yeah, I think one of Aretta's missions, one of the center's missions, is to continually introduce new people to puppetry. And that's always been my goal, is get out there and make sure that what I'm doing can be entertaining to someone who doesn't think puppetry is for them, right?
Oh, I think that's perfect to kind of end on that. I do want to open everything up to anyone who's here, any of the XPT participants who might have questions of their own that they want to ask Thom or Aretta. Anybody? You don't have to raise your hand. You can just speak up.
Oh, you're welcome, Stephanie. And you all know where to find us, right? I mean, I think Wade, just know that, of course, for what it's worth, we're resources, right? We're happy to share any of the things that haven't gone well and the things that have gone well. We've done everything from tabletop to shadow to large scale movement with projections to, object work to, rod puppetry. So if there's anything that we could kind of advise on, we're happy to do it.
Great. Appreciate that. Thank you. Awesome. Well, if we don't have any more questions,
Actually, I just have one quick question.
Great.
Hi, Tyler.
Hi, my wife and I were already thinking about pieces for possibly next year's XPT. And we would love to do something with shadow puppetry, but is there like a really good source as far as like an introduction to shadow puppetry? Because we know obviously nothing about that at all.
Absolutely. Book wise, please hold.
Okay. Yes. Look at you asked the right person. She's an educator, so she knows all this stuff. For me, there's tons of videos on YouTube, certainly. And of course, attending whatever show you can helps. Seeing live shadow puppetry is really great. And then I've invested in a Cricut, and I know that Anthony can tell you about that as well. We both love the Cricut. If you don't have one, it is so easy to make, paper puppets or even plastic puppets out of the Cricut, because basically you share a picture with it and it cuts it out for you.
So what is a Cricut for the people who don't know?
So something as simple, it's like a printer, right? So let me see a white piece of paper. So if I'm trying to cut something really complicated out that says Donkey and Alex on a ribbon with an X-Acto, that would take forever. And you would probably not be very precise. You'd make some mess. The Cricut is like a printer that you put a piece of paper down on a sticky surface so that it holds the paper in place, and you put that sticky board and oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, so some of our pieces from Alice in Wonderland are right here. So you run that board with the paper stuck to it. For me, it's cardstock, black cardstock. And that's our version of the Mad Hatter and our Queen of Hearts. So you get a lot of detail that you wouldn't get even with an X-Acto.
So is a Cricut something you find at the art supply store, or you can buy it on Office Depot? Like, where are we talking?
Well, you can buy it online. Michael's has them, of course, and they come in different sizes, different price ranges. I have both. I have one of the big ones, and I love it. But I recently bought what's called a Cricut Joy, which is only about this big, and it would crank out a puppet about the size of what I showed you with the Mad Hatter, with no problem. Or if I needed, so I take it on the road with us in case we have issues, and if I need to print a big one, I'll print it in pieces and tape it together, right? So you can get something really inexpensive like the Joy and get the same stuff out of it. And you can just use JPEGs or whatever you can get your hands on for art, and it'll cut it out for you.
Checking rights, of course, artist rights and copyright. But one of the best books that you could ever want is this one.
Oh, Bradshaw.
It's Richard Bradshaw's Guide to Shadow Puppets. Richard Bradshaw is a Sydney, Australia-based puppeteer who has created some of the most incredible shadow puppetry. He's revered in the puppeteers world, and it actually is going to the basics. It's really quite simple. It's a vignette-based work, short beginning, middle, end pieces, but this has everything about building shadow stories to shadow mechanisms, theories and concepts, and it's super fun and bite-sized, and he has designs as well. So it's a beautiful, beautiful, fun book. But I would really suggest Richard Bradshaw's work. Oh, it's Charlemagne. Oh yeah,
Charlemagne Press.
Charles just said it's not on Amazon right now, but it's Charlemagne Press. But it's lovely, and I think that'd be a great place to grab a hold of that book and then look up Richard Bradshaw's work, and just the idea of how, why, and when to use shadows it's right there.
Also know that you have this community of people around you, like us, like the people you've met through XPT, who've all probably experienced it on some level, that are going to be able to help you with ideas. I just did on behalf of 10048, did a show with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, which was an experience unto itself, to be able to sit on stage with a full orchestra playing Indiana Jones and playing music from Jurassic Park. And we did animal puppets, shadow screens. The shadow screens were 8 feet tall, 3 feet wide. There were 2 of us. And I cut over 150 puppets in a week. And you couldn't have done that with an X-Acto, but with a Cricut, I can cut out 10 puppets at a time. So there are efficiencies there, but I turn to other people to be, I've never built a scrim. I've never personally built a scrim. So what do I build a scrim out of? And the answers are really simple. Get a white sheet, get a white shower curtain. There are all kinds of translucent materials that really work well. So I just turned to my puppetry friends and said, hey, what do you use? Or have you ever seen anything? Or what's the cheapest way to get it done? There are all kinds of great solutions out there.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Of course.
To speak on the custody after projects,
Oh, yeah.
and what happened with the XPT groups after the fact. Because I know in my personal piece, I think I lost some friends, and it is, okay, as I like to say, there isn't crying in baseball, but there's definitely crying in puppetry. And it's, as a director, it was a lot, like a lot. And as far as, I guess, the custody goes, if you want to pursue your project some more, how to go about that, sorry, how to go about that without not necessarily hurting feelings, but respecting the other people that were involved at the very beginning.
And I would say it comes from the conversations from the beginning of the process. I know you're not there right now, which is fine, but it comes from the beginning by sitting down and saying, thank you so much for being a part of this magical exploration. My intentions for the piece, either you do or you don't know, right? But making it clear from the beginning that this is an idea that I'm trying out, that we're all going to be a part of. We will have the conversation as soon as we celebrate XPT being done about what is next. I promise you will be a part of that conversation. I think it's just having that meeting once the adrenaline and joy and exhaustion of XPT are done, plan that meeting, right, for early June and get together with food, with drinks, whatever, do a Zoom and say, okay, let's do a debrief right now. How the experience go for you? What did we love? What did we not? And then say, because it will give you time as well in those 3 weeks or so to say, I think it's done or I think it's not, but be clear about that, right? To say, this is my idea as project director. I brought it to the table. I think it's done. If you choose to take any part of this forward, let me know. Just let me know, right? Because as project director.
I hear you. I hear you. And that's very sweet, but I've got to be honest. What I went through, what we went through,
Yeah, it's different. That's why I'm saying this.
Is I had to get a lawyer involved. I paid good money and had, you know, it was hard. And yes, I lost friends.
And this is to prevent that. What I'm saying is,
well, I would go further. I would have a prenup. I mean, it just something simple. You know, you're going into XPT, you're just going to make it clear. I'm the one who brought this idea to the table. Of course, you're going to add to the idea, and that's why you're here. But full ownership belongs to me. And you could, it may be easier in writing and simple, but I would literally just get the team. They could all sign the same piece of paper, just an agreement. You sign it, everybody signs it, and say, yes, of course, it's yours. You know, we'll come here and help you any way we can. And you, at that point, you can also say, yeah, when it's over, if you want to take a part of this, or you want to, you know, work with me on this or whatever, you're welcome to come and ask me about it. But in the end, I need to maintain that this was my idea.
Or not, right? You can also say that you want to share it or that you want to give it away. So I don't know that you have to have that ownership. But again, I just think it's super important to have that conversation because things could be prevented.
Yeah, I'm talking about it out the side of my ass because honestly, I never did it again, you know, and I'm sitting here with my puppetry partner of 10 years thinking, we've never done that. If I walk away with learning to fly right now, I could be in real trouble because she's contributed so much to it. So it's not that I would leave you.
But we have these conversations. We
Just
actually,
make that clear.
but we have a document. We have a document that says name of piece. Is it done? Yes or no? If it's a no, it is not done. What do we want to do with it next? Residency, or we keep this document of everything we've ever done together, put it in a category of, is it done? Is it not? We have those conversations.
We do.
And so that's what I think is super important, is just to have the conversations to hopefully avoid that stuff. But art is messy. Art is passionate. We are all passionate, committed people. So it is just a matter of having that conversation. And even by saying, we will schedule a debriefing to talk about next steps, it already plants the seed. Didn't think about that, right?
Well, I just wouldn't wish what I went through on an interview. I wouldn't. It was really, really rough. Yeah.
That's pretty extreme. I
was
don't think
extreme.
I've ever
it's
heard
rare.
of
No, it's
anything
so
going
rare.
to the courts
No, it's
at
so
the
rare.
start XPT. So
Well, there you go. You have now.
yeah.
Yeah, but oddly, if that's, I mean, I think that's just what it is, right? Is scheduling something far enough away from XPT, 3 weeks or so, that you're kind of rejuvenated, but close enough to it to remember what if the experience is not done or is done, and getting folks together to have that honest conversation is really key. And that way everyone leaves that meeting knowing, right? And say, okay, what do you think next steps would be? If it were to move on, how would you like to be involved, or wouldn't you? If it were to move on, would you like to be involved in how, or wouldn't you? Have that conversation. I just think it's key to do that.
Okay, you do it your way. I'll do it.
Yeah. We know how that ended up.
That's what I want. Writing. I want from now on.
Yeah.
Everybody signs. Yeah.
All right, guys, it's 7:39 right now. I want to obviously especially thank Aretta and Thom for your time and the wealth of knowledge that you've so graciously bestowed onto us. I really, really appreciate it. I hope everyone learned a lot, and I'll keep everyone posted on when the next XPT interview is going to be happening. Hopefully I'm going to get another twofer in the future. So keep your eyes about that. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And Aretta, again, no rush, but whenever you can, just make sure to send that link to me for the recorded version of this.
Absolutely happy to do it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Thank you,
guys.
everyone. Best of luck. We're here for you. Thank you, Wade.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.